Hey guys, welcome to BP the Bible Perspective, a plain and simple study, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse of the entire Bible. Currently, we are in the book of Esther, chapter 4. Now, this is one of the most fascinating books that you will read. I probably should have said this before, but Esther has something else that is like no other book in the Bible, and that is the name God is not mentioned in this book here. Inferred for sure, but not mentioned. And so just think about this when we read through this. You won't find the name God mentioned in the book of Esther. His presence is certainly there, and he is certainly referred to, but just again, interesting note there. Another thing, of course, this book reads like a Hollywood plot. I will now reverse that by saying that Hollywood took a lot of their plot lines from the Bible. And it should not be escaped us that many Jewish people are in Hollywood. Okay? So again, when you read the Old Testament, again, just go throughout the Old Testament, boom, ready-made plots, whether it's David. But this one certainly is just amazing plot line here. So you have Esther, who is just a common girl, extremely beautiful, but also wisdom was imparted to her, making her character because Mordecai had raised her. When Vashti, in her arrogance, bucks up against the king, she's removed from her position. They search for a beautiful queen. What the king got was something much more, a beautiful woman outside and inside. And I'm going to say this, young ladies, the inside beauty will always outlast the outside beauty. Okay? Just keep that in mind. There is a reason why, for example, Playboy magazine has 12 monthly editions, because you get tired of the first. Okay. So the king chooses Esther or Hadassah. All right. So then we advance to his the king promoting Haman, a wicked man who's feeling his power. Everybody, he walks through the streets, everybody bows to him, except one man, Mordecai. And that one man alone then disturbs his peace. And it's amazing how this happens all the time among everybody. Right? Think about this. Driving down the street, one person does that and you focus. This is called road rage. We focus on one person. And that can be life destroying, right? Because you end up going to jail, end up getting killed, yada, yada, yada. In Haman's case, of course, now he focused on one person. His whole existence, his promotion, his success is disturbed because one man would not bow. And he tried to use the king against that and was successful in that he has the king. And which is amazing too, because he goes way beyond, of course, to just not just Mordecai, but then he says, I'm going to destroy all the Jews, which, why would you do that? So he issues this king, this edict. He asks the king to issue the king of the Medes and the Persians. And once the king issues this law, you cannot revoke it. And that is annihilate all the Jews. The king dumb enough to like, okay, why do you want an entire race annihilated? Okay, I can probably understand Mordecai, but entire race, but he just signs the law, and then they're living it up. Okay, so this is where we are, because now all of a sudden the Jews, everybody's in uproar because guess what? Every single Jew is ordered to be annihilated. Ordered to be annihilated. So this is just amazing here. All right, so chapter 4, verse 1, it says, when Mordecai learned all that has occurred, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went to the middle of the city and cried loudly and bitterly. He only went as far as the king's gate, since the law prohibited anyone wearing sackcloth from entering the king's gate. There was great mourning among the Jewish people in every province where the king's command and edict came. They fasted, wept, and lamented, and many lay on sackcloth and ashes. Now keep this in mind, while they were lamenting here, the king was, and Haman was living it up, drinking, right? And also keep this in mind, there was a date set for this to happen. So this was to happen in one day. So it's kind of like having a death sentence, right? In other words, your death sentence is at this date, 30 days from now. 4. Esther's female servants and her eunuchs came and reported the news to her, and the queen was overcome with fear. She sent clothes for Mordecai to wear so he could take off his sackcloth, but he did not accept him. Now she wanted to come and bring him into her palace to talk with him. He could not go past a certain point. He refused to, because what Mordecai is doing is fasting and praying for God's mercy. Okay. Verse 5. Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs, assigned to her, and dispatched him to Mordecai to learn what he was doing and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the city square in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened, as well as the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay the royal treasury for the slaughter of the Jews. Mordecai gave him a copy of the written decree in Susa ordering the destruction, so that Hathach might show it to Esther, explain it to her, and commanded her to approach the king and implore his favor and plead with him personally for her people. Hathach came and repeated Mordecai's response to her. Now, this is kind of interesting right here. Mordecai tells her, you go tell Esther she has to go to the king and plead. Now, sometimes when you're reading these, when you go back to a Hollywood plot, and somebody says, hey, there's a meteor headed toward Earth that's going to wipe out Earth. And then somebody will say, well, let's build a missile to destroy it. You're always going to have someone, they call this creating conflict, but they already got someone that's going to go, well, you can't do that. What about this? Well, watch the conflict here, which is kind of interesting itself, that plays back and forth between Mordecai and Esther, or Hadassah. Verse 10, Esther spoke to Hadassah and commanded him to tell Mordecai, all the warrior officials and the people of the warrior province know that one law applies to every man and woman who approaches the king in the inner courtyard and who has not been summoned. The death penalty. In other words, if you decide just going to walk up into the king and he doesn't hold out that scepter to you, you're killed. It is only if the king extends the gold scepter will that person live. I have not been summoned to appear before the king in the last 30 days. Esther's response was reported to Mordecai. Now, what's kind of interesting is this. You're going to get killed anyway because they're going to find out you're Jewish. Okay, that's the kind of logic here. Verse 13, Mordecai had told the messenger to reply to Esther, don't think that you will escape the fate of all the Jews because you are in the king's palace. If you keep silent at this time, liberation and deliverance will come to the Jewish people from another place. But you and your father's household will be destroyed. Who knows, and this is the famous statement, perhaps you have come to the warrior position for such a time as this. So we see this time coming to the kingdom for a time as this. In other words, and it's exactly true that in all of God's plan, you see that she was put in this position at this time for deliverance. Now notice he said, now if you don't obey, it's going to come from another place. Now again, at this place, also notice that God's name is not mentioned here. Like I said, it's the only book where God's name is not mentioned. All right. Verse 15. Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go and assemble all the Jews who can be found at Susa, and fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, day and night. I and my female servants will also fast in the same way. After that, I will go to the king, even if it is against the law. If I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went and did everything Esther had ordered him. Now, astounding here. Okay, anyway, like I said, you can't write a better script for this. You just cannot write a better script to this here. But that's one of the most fascinating verses right here, where she, again, the conflict, as a writer, and I've written scripts before too, but as a writer, this is the ingredients of it. But anyway, beyond that, realizing again, if she does not act, she's going to be destroyed anyway. Because think about it. Remember, you're dealing with Haman, and by the way, there were several reasons that, let's say if she said, well, I'm not going to risk my life by going to the king. Well, the order was already issued to destroy the Jews. So she was already under that execution. And let's say even if, well, he's going to find out, he still cannot reverse the law. So she might as well go and risk her life. Of course, she's going to find out God is on her side. Chapter 5, verse 1 says, on the third day, Esther dressed up in her royal clothing and stood in the inner courtyards of the palace facing it. The king was sitting on the royal throne in the royal courtroom facing its entrance. And as soon as the king saw Queen Esther standing in the courtyard, she won his approval. He extended the golden scepter in his hand towards Esther, and she approached him and touched the tip of the scepter. Now, here's the beauty of this. You go back and remember the first chapter, Vashti, who was beautiful, probably equally as beautiful as Hadassah. She could not have gotten this audience because of her character. This is why I say that more than beauty itself, and beauty counted here, but more than beauty, her godly character. In other words, even though she didn't know this, right, she probably could have walked up in there every day and he would have stuck that scepter out for Hadassah. Verse 3. What is it, Queen Esther? The king asked her. Whatever you want, even to half the kingdom, will be given you. Now, this phrase, you see, we have seen throughout the scripture here. Whatever you want, up to half the kingdom, whatever you want, half the kingdom, I will give it to you. Half the kingdom. Some people say that it's not necessarily meant to be taken in the literal sense. In other words, you've never seen anyone ask for half the kingdom. Okay? But at the same time, I'm not a historian, so my thing is you did ask. So why not ask for half the kingdom? I'm trying to think of the story here that John the Baptist, remember the story of John the Baptist and Herod, when the Herodias, his daughter danced for Herod in a very seductive way. He said, hey, I'll give you half the kingdom, whatever you want. Give me half the kingdom. And she asked for the head of John the Baptist. And the thing is, why wouldn't you ask for the head of John? I mean, why would you not? Why would at least ask for kingdom? But she, again, so that might be just further proof that it's not necessarily meant to say, hey, give me half the kingdom to rule. Okay, nothing too much to debate about. But anyway, verse 4 said, if it pleases the king, Esther replied, may the king and Haman come today to the banquet I have prepared for them. The king commanded, hurry, get Haman, so that we can do as Esther has requested. So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared. So the king is really into Esther. Dude is really into Esther or Hadassah. So while drinking the wine, the king asked Esther, whatever you ask will be given you. Whatever you want, even half the kingdom will be done. Now I got to wonder when he's asked that, Haman's like, well, wait a minute, partner, wait a minute now. Okay, you giving her half the kingdom? Whoa. Verse 17, verse 7. Esther answered, this is my petition and my request. If the king approves of me, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and perform my request, may the king and Haman come to the banquet I prepare for them. Tomorrow I will do what the king has asked, meaning asked the petition. In other words, he's begging her, I'm gonna give it to you, right? I'm gonna break out into one of these songs. Like, I'm gonna, look, just whatever you ask. Verse 9, that day Haman left full of joy and in good spirits. But when Haman saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and Mordecai didn't rise or tremble in fear at his presence, Haman was filled with rage towards Mordecai. This is sad because, like I say, without him knowing what's going to happen, this man is number 2 in the kingdom. He is, he is allowing one man's action to be his undoing. That he cannot be happy because of one man. That's the sad part. Verse 10. Yet Haman controlled himself and went home. He sent for his friend and his wife, Zeresh, to join him. Then Haman described for him his glorious wealth and his many sons. He told them all how the king had honored him and promoted him in rank over the other officials and the royal staff. What's more, he added, Queen Esther invited no one but me to join the king at the banquet she has prepared. I am invited tomorrow to join her with the king. Now be careful about these kind of things that you think or boast in, right? Kind of, you don't always know. Verse 10, still, right? After all of the glory he just spoke of, still, none of this satisfies me, because I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the king's gate all the time. In other words, not standing and giving his props to me. To the fact that he's ordered the annihilation of the Jews. Which is kind of funny because when you think he says, wouldn't he even be happy to even say, that's all right because, one day he gonna get his. All right. Verse 14. His wife, Zeresh, and all his friends told him, have them build a gallows 75 feet high. Ask the king in the morning to hang Mordecai on it. Excuse me. Then go to the banquet with the king and enjoy yourself. The advice pleased Haman, so he had the gallows constructed. Amazing, right? If you know the story, you know that he is actually constructing these gallows for himself. But the plan was we're going to erect the gallows, hang Mordecai. After all, he's a Jew, so he's also bound for destruction anyway. So hang him, satisfy my evil quest, and then I'm going to go and even get more glory by having a banquet with the king and his woman, the queen. So we'll see what is going to become of that. Now, I would say he should see because what's going to become of him, because he should be able to see how the king is so into Hadassah, but he doesn't know that Hadassah is a Jew. All right, guys, that's my perspective for the day, the Bible study. We'll pick this up in chapter 5, chapter 6. Don't forget to like and share this video. Subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome.